explaining Catalyst 2030 that I'd like to share with you before we start. So if you can give me one moment while I set that up, and then we will move on to the reason that you're all here, to listen to the speakers. So I'm going to share my screen. And here we go.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs. Catalyst 20.
Thank you very much, everyone. And I would like to hand over to Sejo and the rest of the hosts.
Hello, thank you for taking your time to come to this session, which promises to be different because this is a session in which we are not telling others what to do or what they should do or analyze what the others do, but we're taking a moment to look inwards. I have with me my colleagues and friends and teammates, Kavita Anand, Kiran Reddy, Ramiz Alam is not here, but he is part of our team, Shama Karakal, and Bharat Palavalli. So all of us have got together to design this session for you. Hope you will enjoy it. But we have to take a moment first to register the huge disaster that is washing over India and many other countries right now. And we actually have no idea of where it will end and how right now we're talking to each other. But at this very moment, there are many people struggling, gasping for oxygen, struggling for their loved ones to get in hospital bed. There are livelihoods being broken. So I just wanted to say that we must, all of us, remember that all our task here has become even more urgent as we speak. And in this session, we are trying to take a moment to see how have we reached at this place? What has happened? Where did we go wrong? And I would, before we do that, and I would just like to tell you a little bit of the session plan. We are going to be sharing the rationale of this session. After that, many of you who have taken the survey, we have the findings of the survey, which will be presented by Kiran. And then Bharat will introduce us to the panel. And we have an esteemed panel, which you will learn about. And then we have questions to the panel, which will be fielded by Shama, and she will be moderating that. And after that, yeah, we will have an open session where we want you to come up with your feelings, your suggestions on how this kind of reflective thinking can go on. and how it needs to change what we do, and any other suggestion that you may have for Catalyst 2030 and its processes. So can I request my colleague, friend, teammate, Kavita Anand, to explain to us our thoughts and why we are doing what we're doing here today. Thank you, Kavita.
Sorry, somebody's trying to get into the session and is trying to contact me to find out why they can't. So I think there seems to be some difficulty. So just to give a quick background, I think we all know about the fact that we live in a very unequal, divided society. And it's been very clear when a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, after Black Lives Matter, wrote me an anguished note saying, well, why don't Dalit lives matter? Why don't other lives matter? Why have we not been able to make a big deal about it? And I said to him that, yeah, everybody's life matters, but the whole problem is that we don't live in a world that we want. We live in a world that we are trying to change. And what we first need to start with is being very clear, creating a very clear vision in our minds of what world do we want to live in? What is it that we want to inhabit? And then we want to make that happen as much as possible. So as an educator, I mean, I'll just give you a very quick insight into the kinds of things that happened when I had a school that was in Mumbai. And Mumbai is home to multiple communities and ethnic groups and every kind of politics that you can think of. But what was important, therefore, was for me to make specific decisions. I was very inspired by the idea that Canadian schools, for example, have a policy that says that your teachers have to represent the ethnic groups in your school. And I thought that's quite remarkable, that if you have different people, a multicultural school, then you have to have multicultural staff. You can't just have the same staff that other schools have without thinking about who is the child and what does the child see as a teacher and who does the child find as an inspiration. So that was one big thing. Another was the question of like, how does one deal with the fact that the community that's in your school may have a very different requirement, may want to actually perpetuate the inequities in society, which you as a leader are trying to deal with, right? So a simple thing of trying to say that, okay, every student in the school will wear a unisex uniform, brought a contingent of parents to my room, sort of almost yelling at me saying, if God has made girls and boys different, how can you try and get them to look the same? So it's that sort of thing that you have to contend with. And then, of course, interestingly, that same uniform, because it was a khadi spun uniform created by a women's cooperative. So I was trying to link the personal with the political and saying that, this is how children learn. They actually used to go and meet those women making their uniforms. So in our events, we had everyone, the entire staff wore the same uniform, kurta, that we had. And I had a parent coming up to me in an event saying, this isn't right. You're not doing the right thing. So I said, what am I doing wrong? And she said, you've got your support staff can't be distinguished from your teaching staff. And that's not okay. And I said, you've given me a massive compliment by telling me that. But that's exactly what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And these are simple decisions we've made. And the last one I'd like to talk about is the fact that a very well-meaning friend, not friend, but acquaintance from a school, who we had invited as a chief guest, came, and we showed her the entire school with a lot of excitement. And she went around, she looked at it, and looked at my teachers, and then had this expression on her face. And then she came into my room afterwards and she said, in my school, we make it a rule that all the women teachers have to wear saris. So I said to her, well, in my school, we don't have a rule like that. That was the end of the conversation. But that's exactly what is a day-to-day basis. And especially when you're dealing with an educational space, this is what happens to you. And if we were to take that into our own lives and begin to look at what's happening in our organizations, what's happening within our friends groups, what's happening when we are dealing with the people at home who are our helpers, who sort of every day are working to actually make life easier for us? How is it that we treat everyone around us? And in what way do we interrogate our own politics? So I think it's with that feeling that we have come into this room today. We want all of us to look within. We want to be able to see whether there can be a very clear vision we build of what world do we want to live in, and then how do we achieve it. And with that, I want to sort of kick this off and say, let's do this. Please use the chat to talk about your own personal experiences, to talk about your own thinking, and let's have a good session, Sejo. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Kiran, now you have 38 people all now waiting for you to present the survey that you all took, and we are all, it's a lot of suspense that Kiran has built up to this point. So all yours now.
All right. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I'm going to quickly share my screen. Yes. Just a little bit of a rider that this is not all encompassing, as in we got members from Catalyst as well as we've got members who are friends in our networks. Many of you who've joined us today, we hope would come join us in Catalyst 2030 as we embark on this project. So without further delay, I'm just going to move into presentation. Sorry, yeah. Okay. So we did the survey in 2 parts. If you haven't yet taken the survey, you will have the opportunity. We intend to make this a tool of self-reflection for our membership, and of course for people who wish to apply it in their own organizations or in their own context are more than welcome to take it up. So the first question that we asked people was whether they're born in urban background. I've got the analysis towards the end, so I'm going to quickly power through this. Property ownership, whether people categorized in the upper income bracket. Do you have parents who know how to read, write, and why this is important, we'll come back to. And have you undergone any formal education? Everyone who took this response was university educated. In fact, we have one PhD as well, perhaps on this call right now. And you can afford to own any of the following assets. Someone was kind enough to tell us a few more assets that they owned. And these were all kind of like privilege tick marks for individuals. We had a balance-ish, close enough gender representation. It's like I said, it's not reflective of the actual full membership, but it's at least something for us to ponder upon. And of course, no qualms about 100% access to internet. So formal credit instruments, now this was something that was interesting. And do you belong to the upper class? So here, this is something that I'd spend a little bit more time upon, that there were a few questions that had popped up. Right now, it's not showing. I'll pull up the comments, but these particular extra information that we received. My analysis quickly for the privileges was that, I'll come back to this as well when we are doing the discussion. English literacy is an obvious one. Technology is, again, something that was obvious because we were doing this online. Majority of the people were urban-centric, maybe even born in rural areas, but now living in urban. These were certain data points that were important. Almost all of the people who were there were educated formally. There was a moderate gender balance, and caste class-based representation, we have a very small minority represented today from these particular groups. And the peer privilege network was absent for 1 out of 3 members. And of course, we had, this was a very preliminary survey. We couldn't go into much depth with regards to what do we mean by privilege, what do we mean by many of these aspects that we had, but we deferred to the person's wisdom of how they interpreted these things and what they felt about it. If you like, I can spend a little bit more time on the privilege aspect before jumping into the discrimination. I'm just going to exit this mode so that we can go back. There was a comment which was around sexual preferences, and the person basically mentioned that it's a complex, this is a oversimplified way of looking at it. We apologize, that was not our intention, but we just wanted to check that aspect so that we could bring it up in conversation and reflect further upon it. What is the majority of either of these things in our country, and language? And I mean, yes, this is a fractal conversation. The more we go into the depth of it, the more deeper we can go. And as much as we zoom out, it is all encompassing at this stage. And our attempt today is more of a beginning of this conversation, acknowledging it, so that we can take proactive measures to include the same. And a lot of people, I think, when it came to the answer of do you feel a sense of belonging with the majority, I think almost every person has checked on some parameter or the other that they do not feel aligned with the majority. So I guess even the yardstick of how we measure mainstream as opposed to individual identity, I think these notions itself need us to perhaps adopt a better language to communicate ourselves, our views, and to have a relatable exchange about these things. And when it comes to some of the other privileges that some of the members were kind enough to write in the other section, were access to knowledge, access to social media, peer privilege networks, etc. Somewhere or the other, they loosely get captured. But a few of the things that really struck out was, I guess, like a simple thing like a skin color or an accent. And these go pretty much unnoticed and in a subconscious bias, perhaps. So all of these things, like how do we create an inclusive community and culture within Catalyst 2030? These are all thoughts to ponder upon and check our individual biases. As much as we try to be conscious, I think subconsciously the conditioning, the unlearning that needs to take place, it's worth exploring this. We'll come back to this towards the end of our session, where we are actually kept about 15 minutes for discussion. And I'll be taking down your points on the slides that we have here so that we can kind of create some kind of report from this. So I'm going to quickly jump into discrimination. I'm not going into full screen. I think it's relatively fine. If anyone wants me to zoom in more or something, please let me know. But this was the most comprehensive question that we had, which was about discrimination. Now note that we have asked people to answer in the affirmative if they have faced discrimination. So these are all affirmative answers of the discrimination that people have faced. We've had 36 respondents, but an individual has the option to pick multiple points. So we don't know exactly how many unique individual, like one individual faced how many discriminations. We can't ascertain that right now because maintaining anonymity, we are not looking at any personal indicators or going back and seeing one individual across the journey at this stage. The idea is more of to look at the issue rather than the person at this stage. So when we talk about these discriminations, I'll quickly take you to the summary there. Do not own land property, do not have faced discrimination for not owning land property, have faced discrimination because their parents were not English speaking, and for their education, and for formal credit mechanisms, which also links to affluence. So I guess the in very brief summary, it's that gender discrimination was maximum and is not just limited to women. Some men have also affirmed this. 1 out of 4 people whose parents can't speak English felt discriminated against. Inability to access credit has hampered 2 out of the 5 respondents. Language, culture, life choices, habits, religion, economic strata, affluence, age have been grounds of discrimination for 1 out of 4 people. And marginal representation of people with disabilities and alternative sexual orientation. If you notice, only 1 respondent has clicked that they have faced discrimination there. And I think if we haven't touched upon like, is your privilege that you have an able-bodied self, or if your sexual orientations are mainstream, we haven't dived too deep into that. But as of now, what we can reflect is what we have in terms of data with us. So on this front, I would say that we look forward to your participation today. We thank you for joining us, and we hope that your support in helping us shape this movement to be inclusive, accessible, and equitable. We don't have too much time, so I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Bharat, all yours from here.
Yes, thank you, Kiran. I think it was nice to look at those results again, and it's always wonderful to look at these sort of surveys because it opens up 2 conversations, right? One is all of us talk about labels and markers all the time, but when we start putting pen to paper, when we start figuring out what are these markers, what are these labels, and how it affects us, and how it shapes our interaction with people around us. A few points that sort of become very stark, at least, is that each of us have multiple identities, multiple hats, and how we inhabit them, how we interact with others when we inhabit them is quite critical for us to be able to understand how we can move forward. Because without being able to acknowledge these differences, and without acknowledging the fact that we behave in certain ways because of these differences, there is no moving forward. And I think one of the exercises that we often do is, I think many of you are familiar with it, right? The privilege walk, or what I'd like to call the walk of shame, is pretty much with the, what we think is a homogeneous set of people. When we start asking these questions and we ask them to move forward based on their responses, you see how diverse a group we become with the same set of questions. And that's a good way to begin any conversation about how we are different and how we can work together in order to ensure that even though we are different, we don't necessarily have to have different starting points, right? How can we make it more inclusive? And the aim, like Kiran and Sejo mentioned, was not to talk about the fact that we are extremely inclusive, or to talk about the fact that we are not, but to just have a conversation with all of you here today to talk about where we are at as a group and how do we make sure that in the future, like Kavita said, what is that vision for the future that we'd like to pick? And therefore, in order to do that, we need to first look at ourselves internally, because as Catalysts 2030, one of our objectives is to be inclusive. And like Sejo mentioned, the problems that we face very much today are a result of us not being inclusive and therefore not being sustainable, right? So on that note, I will not, like Kiran said, I will not take up too much time because we have 3 wonderful panelists with us here today. We have Sudarshan, we have Manjula, and we have Venkat Reddy. All 3 are working in different areas, and I will not be introducing them. They will be introducing themselves. Please, for everyone else on this discussion, please type in your questions in the chat. We will field them. We will also be translating content as and when there is material. And in case you have questions or you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out through the chat with any one of us. And Sejo, I'll hand it over to you. Should I introduce Sudarshan, or will you bring in Sudarshan? Great. Okay, Sudarshan, the floor is all yours to begin with.
Yeah, just please introduce yourself and then we will come back. Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead,
thank you.
Sudarshan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sejo. Thank you, Kavita. And I think that report was wonderful, the findings and the kind of observations you have come up with. That's very realistic and relatable. can I have my PPT? I think Kiran was.
No. Just introduce yourself quickly, and then we go ahead.
Okay, only introduction. Okay. That's fine. Then for introduction, I'm Sudarshan Kasbe. Right now, I'm working with Haq Darshak, and I have been working in this sector for last 4-5 years, specifically in education and skill development arena. I have completed schooling in one of the prestigious universities, but again, coming here and discussing these topics, I'm here as a looking from the perspective of marginalized students or Dalit, being a Dalit, how you acquire the leadership position. So right now I'm a director of an organization which works on the issues of atrocities and trying to empower or skill building of youth from marginalized communities. Okay. So yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Mr. Venkat Reddy, please introduce yourself.
My name is Venkat Reddy. Good afternoon, madam. My name is Venkat Reddy. I am his MSM community member is Chikbulapur Nisarga MSM Society, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Venkat Reddy. Manjula ji, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. This is Manjula Pradeep. I'm based in Ahmedabad, a human rights activist for past 3 decades. And I'm very thankful for all of you to inviting me for this very important event. I just want to say that my own journey of coming from a marginalized community and where I am, it will be good for me to even share with my own experiences, what I've gone through and what are my insights. And thank you, Sajo, for inviting. Thanks.
Yeah. So I just want to put a small framework here. And this is what we had sent to the speakers. Since we are very short of time, and Manjula, a whole film should be made on your life. So these 5 minutes are no substitute at all. So the questions here are, so please keep that in mind. What structures facilitated your entry into leadership and decision-making places? Do you think you are an exception? And how have the decisions been different since you are here? Do you think you'll be able to open up more spaces? How do you think you can bring inclusive leadership on existing platforms? Yeah. And how will this be a change which is more than optics? We don't want any tokens here. Yeah. So these are some of the questions that you please keep in your mind for the 5-minute presentation. We'll keep the rest of the time for interaction. I'm sure the audience will have a lot of questions. So go ahead. First person to present is Sudarshan. And Kiran is ready with your slide, Sudarshan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again. So I think the questions are very important and crucial to talk about these things. But before getting into that, I thought of my journey coming here or discussing here. First of all, thank you, Catalyst. Next slide, please. So point is, when I'm trying to put something forward or I want to share my journey, I have broken it down in 5 pieces. For an example, if I have to look at how I started in social sector for that matter, or post my education, how I entered in this space, what kind of engagement I had, how this space enabled me or the structure which was there, and how it empowered me, and how this exit can help others to be part of it. I'm going to talk about that. So let me just give you a brief glance of maybe 6 to 7 months back. Okay, I'm being very frank here, so please I'm apologizing already if there are any mistakes. But almost 6-7 months back, when I quit my last job, the project was over and I was looking at job market. I had a good exposure. I was a degree holder, postgraduate degree holder from one of the best university in the country, with a lot of internship, lot of extracurricular activities, and all the scope I had. But I think after applying to 50 to 60 organizations, I received a reply from maybe 5 to 6 organizations. Now, again, the scenario can be owing to the kind of situation we had in country. It may be because of COVID, or it may be because of unemployment, raising unemployment rate. But for me, I think it has another facet as well, and that was somewhere the background I come from and how that is identified. So another person who has almost same credential, maybe less experience than me, less extracurricular activities than me, he get call back from like much more organization than me. That that thing struck me, and I was actually thinking, why this happened, or what is the cause behind that? And then I could come up with few pointers, and I tried to put that in a structure for everyone's case. First thing, when we discuss about entry in these spaces, be it be organization, be it be social enterprise, or be it be any corporate company, how that entry is difficult for a person coming from maybe a marginalized background, or a person coming from upper caste, upper class background. For me, who was responsible for my entry, I would give that credit to few persons, not to the entire system, or not to the system which is prevalent in our social sector as well. So what are the challenges, or why that person helped me? I think first of all, let's understand the challenges. When anyone try to enter in this space, what are the challenges? So first, lack of information, the kind of exclusive nature of jobs we have, or the kind of opportunities we offer, the information is very restricted and very, I would say, exclusively passed to certain group of people, certain sets of personals who can get benefited from them. Then a lack of social capital. To be honest with all of you, I think the kind of background I had, or my classmates, looking at my classmates, they are at much better position than I am. And it's not only owing to my skill set or my fluency in English, that also owing to the kind of social capital they have, the kind of networking they have, and I don't. So all of these things actually affect entry. Then lack of infrastructure. When I am sitting at a jhopda and giving interview, another person sitting in an AC room and giving interview, and how they perform in that interview, that makes sure, or that impact their entry in that space, right? So all of these things, and these are very tip of the iceberg. It's not entire thing. So this is what the challenges are, and what can be possible solutions. Again, our panelists have like 2 to 3 times more experience than whatever I possess in this field. But from my limited understanding, I try to put forward some solutions, such as we can be considerate of situation. We can be like consciously reach out to people where these people can be involved more. They can be taken into consideration while they apply for the job. We can try to build that positive reinforcement to enable the diversity in our own team. That team which work on the NGO or social enterprise doesn't really matter. But as long as there is diversity, there is going to be multiple opinions. It is going to be impacting positively in the growth and development at that organization, right? So this is first E of the story, which talks about entry, where on the second ladder, I would say it's engagement. So again, one of my personal experiences, I was working in Delhi with a think tank. And in my entire life, after post-graduation also, I first time saw the coffee machine. And that think tank had the coffee machine for employees. So every employee in the break used to go and get that coffee and like chill with that, to be in colloquial language. They used to do that. But I was so not at all comfortable in that situation, at my like lowest sort of thing. So that thing, or that kind of environment, builded that thing in myself. I think I was more of, I had inferiority complex, to be put it precisely. At that moment, or that space created that discomfort. And I would say, when you have that inferiority complex, you can't blame anyone else, because you don't have that understanding where you are able to raise your voice. So that system needs to be considerate to that situation. How we can reduce that, or how we can put a measures which will not let anyone get that inferiority complex. Okay, again, so same thing. And it's not only about skill set or the kind of knowledge I have, but the kind of environment space I am, I think that affects a lot. So perception, inferiority complex, maybe a skill set differences, the hierarchy, the kind of comfort other people have in that space and I don't, that affects me or affects anyone for that matter. So that is the second E of situation, where I'm talking about engagement, how you engage with the people coming from marginalized background, or the people who might not have so much resources or privilege as you have. Again, I'm saying that when this situation happened, the people who had privileges or the people who had good education, good facilities might be very confident, might be very fluent, might be very productive as per completing your targets. But is that the case, or is that the only thing which affects your employees' what you call performance? Because I think we have a different set of parameters to engage with that. So it should not be only 90 degree. It can be 360 degree where we are providing grooming and all. So what can be solution for such things? So I think this is one of the best thing from my last organization, where we had spaces for collaborative working. There was a sort of a space where we can agree to disagree, where we had a space where we can break the barriers of arguments, and I can counter anyone in that space. So I think that space builded confidence where I could put forth my opinion. So that is sort of engagement. I think engagement is more about how your leaders in that space are enabling or engaging with the new joinees in that company or that organization, and how they help them, right? So that brings me to third point. Oh,
so since you've given me the liberty to stop you, so
okay,
your time is all up. Yeah. So please be fast.
Okay, so quickly, yes. So what enabling point, I wanted to highlight more on creating that space where people can take the ownership, they can take a call. And I think valuing their opinion, their perception, their thought process is more of enabling them in form of they are coming together and they are putting their opinion forward. I think due to lack of this thing, I'll quickly glance through empower and exit. Empower is majorly talking about, okay, so for an example, anyone coming from upper caste might not be able to fetch few more Dalit students or few more Dalit employees in that space. It might be a little difficult, but yes, Dalit who is at the leadership position, he is gonna do that, or he will have that space, or he can do contribute to that action more productively. I think that is what I am trying to put forward from Empower, that everyone who is coming in the organization, we can enable and empower them to make that decision and bring more people from the same community, or bring that diversity to the table with the diverse ideas in that platform. And the last point, which is again about exist, this exist can be a legacy. So again, sorry for being dramatic, and I know I'm already short time, but your exit from any organization should not be because of the organizational policy or the kind of discrimination you faced or the kind of treatment you have received in that place. Your exit should be your own will. And we as an organization can make sure that whoever employee from marginalized background are leaving our organization, it is not owing to the kind of discomfort they faced in that organization, but because of his or her choice, right? So I think majorly that's all. Sorry for taking more time, but I think conscious decision of inclusion and making that positive reinforcement to maintain that diversity is every one of us job. Every one of us need to take that very seriously. That's when it will happen. Thank you so much, Sejo. Thank you, Kavita.
No, thank you, Sudarshan. And I won't take any time between you and Mr. Venkat Reddy. Mr. Venkat Reddy, you have your 5 minutes. We're waiting to hear you.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಮೇಡಮ್. ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ವೆಂಕಟರೆಡ್ಡಿ ಅಂತ. ನಾನು ಭಾರತ ದೇಶದಿಂದ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಚಿಕ್ಕಬಳ್ಳಾಪುರ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯಿಂದ ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. MSM ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಈ ದಿನ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನ, ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಕಥೆಯನ್ನ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಂತಹ ಕ್ಯಾಟ್ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಏನಿದೆ, ಆ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ನಾನು ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗಲಿಂದ ಈ ಸಮುದಾಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸೇರಿದವನಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗಲಿಂದ ನಾನು 16 ವರ್ಷ ತನಕ ಏನು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಆಟ ಆಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ನನಗೆ ಹದಿಹರೆಯದ ವಯಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ನನ್ನ ದೇಹದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳು ಕಂಡು ಬಂತು. ಯಾಕೆ ನನಗೆ ಈ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ ಈ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದಾವ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರಿಗೂ ಈ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದಾವ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಮಾನಸಿಕವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ದೈಹಿಕವಾಗಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಷ್ಟವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಂದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಕ್ಕಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆಯವರಿಂದ ತುಂಬಾ ಒಂದು 7-8 ಟೈಮ್ ಕೂಡ ಹೊಡೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಹಿಂಸೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಆ ಹಿಂಸೆಯಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತನಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೋದಾಗ ಆ ಒಂದು ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಎಂಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ರು ನನಗೆ. ಆ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಎಂಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯು ನನಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಸಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಪರಿಚಯವಾಗ್ತಾ ಅವರು NSM ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆಗ ಅವರು ಸುಮಾರು ಸಭೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಲೈನ್ ಲೀಡರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಗಳಿಗೆ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತೇಜನ ಕೊಟ್ಟರು. ಆ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ತರಬೇತಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಅಟೆಂಡ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ನಂತರನೇ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಇನ್ನೂ ಇದಾರಲ್ಲ, ನಾನ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಇದ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂದು, ಅದೇ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಈ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಸಭೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಹಾಜರಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಂತ ಒಂದು ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಹಲವಾರು ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಕೂಡ ಓದಿದೆ. ಆ ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇತ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ಅಲ್ಲ ಸಮುದಾಯದವನು, ಇನ್ನೂ ನನ್ನ ಪ್ರಪಂಚದಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ನನ್ನ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂತು ನನಗೆ. ಅಲ್ಲ, ಈ ನನಗೆ ಆದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕಷ್ಟಗಳು ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಕೂಡ ಆಗಬಾರದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಬಂತು ನನಗೆ. ಅವಾಗ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ನನಗೆ ಬಂದಂತ ಒಂದು ಕಷ್ಟಗಳು ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಬರಬಾರದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂತು. ಆ ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾನು ಯಾಕೆ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಟಿ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಬಾರದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾನು ಮತ್ತೆ ನನ್ನ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರ ಜೊತೆ ಸೇರಿ ಒಂದು 5-6 ಜನ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರ ಜೊತೆ ಸೇರಿ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ವಿ. ಆ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಸರ್ಗ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ನಿಸರ್ಗ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಯು ಲಿಂಗತ್ವ ಮತ್ತು ಲೈಂಗಿಕ ಅಲ್ಪಸಂಖ್ಯಾತರ ಆಧಾರಿತ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಾಗಿದೆ. ಅದು ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್. ನಾವು ಇದು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು 5/7/2011 ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದೆ ನಾನು. ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು 1800 ಜನ ನಾನು ಸಮುದಾಯದಲ್ಲಿ ರಿಜಿಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆದ್ರು ನನ್ನ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ. ನಾನು ಅವರ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳನ್ನ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಟದ ಮೇಲೆ ನನಗೆ ಆ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸ್ತು. ಅನಿಸಿದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಇವರು ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಕಷ್ಟಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಮಾಡ್ಲೇಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ ನನ್ನ ಅಂತ ಪಣ ತೋಡಿದಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಯೋಜನೆಗಳು, ಹಲವಾರು ಸ್ಕೀಮ್ಗಳು, ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳು ಇದಾವೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. ಈ ಒಂದು ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾದಾಗ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ದು ತುಂಬಾ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದಾಯ್ತು. ನನಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡ್ಲೇಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ದೇಶದಿಂದ ನಾನು ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಭೇಟಿ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಸವಲತ್ತುಗಳು ಇತ್ತು. ಅದನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಸುಮಾರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ 1200 ಜನರಿಗೆ ಕೌಶಲ್ಯ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ತರಬೇತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ರೇಷನ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್, ವೋಟರ್ ID ಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವರ ಕೌಶಲ್ಯ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಯನ್ನ ಅವರನ್ನ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ನನ್ನ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ 2 ಇದಾಯ್ತು, ಉಪಯೋಗಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ಒಂದು ಏನಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದಾಯ್ತು, ಮತ್ತೆ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಗುರುತಿಸುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಮಟ್ಟ ಕೂಡ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಾಯ್ತು. ನಾನು ಏನು ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ನಾನು ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡಿಸಿದೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಗುರುತಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಉತ್ತಮ ಬೆಲೆ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಹಲವಾರು ವೇದಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಸಮುದಾಯದವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ನಾನು ಈ ಅವಕಾಶವನ್ನು ಬಳಸಿಕೊಂಡು ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಕೂಡ ಉತ್ತಮ ಒಂದು ಬೆಲೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟರು ನನಗೆ. ಒಂದು ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ನನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ, ನನ್ನ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಂದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕಷ್ಟ ಬರಬಾರದು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನನ್ನ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ನನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳನ್ನ ಒಗ್ಗೂಡಿಸಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ಬಗೆಹರಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಬಂತು. ಆ ಒಂದು ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಒಂದು ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳನ್ನ ಒಗ್ಗೂಡಿಸಿ ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ಬಗೆಹರಿಸಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನಾನು ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡೆ, ಈ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಏನೇನೋ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾವೆ, ಆ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ನನ್ನ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಬಾರದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾನು ಈಗ ಏನ್ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡಿಸಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಏನು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಸವಲತ್ತುಗಳು ಬೇರೆ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಡಿಸಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಬಂತು. ನಾನು ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಈಗ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಏನು ಅನಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಸೆಕ್ಸ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಒಂದು ಗುಂಪನ್ನ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಾರಸ್ ಕೋಲಿಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರು ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಸೇರಿಸಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳಿದಾವೆ. ಅವನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ತಂದು ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರ ಒಂದು ಕಷ್ಟಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ದೇಶವಾಗಿದೆ. ಇಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಂತಹ ಏನು ತಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಹಾಗೂ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಸರ್.
Thank you so much, Mr. Venkata Reddy. Sama, do you think you want to add something orally? You may have missed out, or it's okay.
I tried to do a very rapid translation on chat for everybody. There's only so much to translate. But I have worked personally with Venkat Reddy and his community organization. And he is an amazing gentleman, as are his colleagues. And they work very closely with the government. I think echoing what Sudarshan said, it's really about creating space and they are able to take and run with it and create such change. It is the leadership of Venkat Reddy, his colleagues, and many other community organizations that really creates impact on the ground. And I'll open it up for anybody who wants to put questions in the chat, and we'll take it in open discussion, but I know we have limited time. So thank you, everyone. He's really grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Shall I add, Shema, about Venkat Reddy, the difficult times of COVID-19? Yeah?
Yeah, no, we will come back for the discussion because we have our eminent speaker, Manjula Pradeep, waiting, who will build on both, she will build on both these experiences, and she brings to ourselves not only the richness of her being the leader of one of the leading Dalit rights organizations, she has now experienced the double whammy of being a Dalit woman, and then she has become a leader and created a space for a lot of other such leaders. So Manjula, your 5 minutes, and we'll come back to you with questions after that. Yeah.
Yes, I'll be very brief, Sejo. I'll finish in 5 minutes. I think you already shared about my personal background. I just want to say that when I was listening to the survey, I just realized that, yes, I am from the marginalized community, a non-English speaking parent family I am from. And I am someone who I have gone through several forms of oppression and marginalization within my own family and within the organizations and platforms. To be very honest with all of you, I just want to lay forward is that my marginalization didn't stop with just gender and caste. I think now I'm struggling with also is my religious identity, which I challenged within my own family and my organization where I led for 12 years and worked with that organization for 25 years. I became a Buddhist. So I think this is something one needs to understand that when the entire concept of leadership for me is something where you are not born a leader, but you become a leader. And the leadership which comes up is also through a lot of pain and struggle. And most of us who overcome those struggles and pain become leaders, because many of people in my community, my colleagues and my friends, I have seen them, how they have suffered, and they are not leaders, because leadership is something where people test you again and again. And when you are from the marginalized community, how do you create yourself within the different platforms which are there, within around your circle, outside your circle, and also within the framework of intersectionality? Because as I was listening to Dalit Black Lives Matter, I was just thinking about how we have tried to bring the entire concept of notion of how do you address the issue of gender within your own movement. And as a woman, and the first woman in my organization when I was 22, and now I build up the entire understanding on intersectionality, and within that framework, how do you bring rights of women from the marginalized community? And at that time, it was more of when I joined, it was more of understanding my own struggle and the identity of gender within the organization where I worked for so many years. But I must say that I think that the struggle which one goes through is something which needs to also see with that framework, that is there a change going to happen? Because ultimately we are leaders, and if we believe ourselves as leaders and we want to bring change, which means that we have to accept something which is which can create inclusivity. But it also means that as you have gone through exclusion, which is part of that survey which we saw the presentation. So when you're talking about exclusion and you're trying to be inclusive, how difficult it is to become inclusive, because you yourself have gone through so much of exclusion. And I think with regards to the Dalit rights movement, I think we are seeing that struggle which is happening is that the domination of the gender, the man within the Dalit rights movement, how it has impacted the lives of women in the community, that they have to create their own platforms, right? They have to create their own organizations. And women like me, who are very strong and who was elected as a director of the organization, how difficult it was for me to bring the entire concept of not only gender but sexuality as well, and how to raise the issues of sexual violence, of discrimination against Dalit women, was something which explored the idea of that, am I being accepted in this organization? Because I am doing something which is not, which is so-called the caste identity organizations within the Dalit rights movement. They tend to just negate the fact that, yeah, gender also matters. I just want to lay forward is that within my 30 years, I've been in 25 years, I think I could do a lot of things within the organization Navsurjan, which became one of the largest organization in the country in Gujarat. And I come from a very difficult state. I come from the state of the Prime Minister, but I've challenged the system. I've challenged on serious issues of not only sexual violence, but also caste-based violence, also the issues of livelihood and the employment, and how people are being discriminated based on their identities. And then I just a few minutes, just want to say that in last 5 years, things have changed for me. And I feel blessed that I have left that organization, because I felt that I didn't leave the organization. I was somehow thrown out of the organization, but it was a difficult time. I just want to say that 2017 was the most painful period in my life, because 2016 was, as you know, there were some incidents, if you are aware about what happened in Gujarat, where 4 Dalit men were flogged by cow vigilante. So I was handling that case. I was handling cases of police atrocities, killings of policemen in Gujarat, and sitting on protest, doing several mass gatherings. So everything I was doing at that time. And suddenly I realized that, am I becoming a threat to the organization? So, and to whom? To the established people who think that they are the founders and they will be running the organization. So where are the values, where are the ethos, and where are the principles for which your organization are laid down? It's not only one particular organization. I think it cut across several organizations in the country. It's not only Dalit rights organization, it's any organization. If you see why the organizations are not growing or changing, because the founders or those who have well-established leadership, they don't want to move out. They don't want to give leadership to those people who come up with new ideas, with new principles and with new energy. I think this is something I want to lay forward. So last 5 years, I'm part of this Dalit Human Rights Defenders Network, where I'm leading the network as a director of campaigns, and we are raising issues of caste atrocities. The last event which we did was we have released a book on caste atrocity during the COVID-19 lockdown. So that I will share you the link of that to Sejo. And the other aspect which I want to say, that I became a founder of Wave Foundation, and that was this is very integral for me, because I came out from my own orbit of saying that no, my identity as a Dalit woman should stick with me. No, I want to work with marginalized communities, which means I have to open my horizon. I want to bring those people who are also affected like me, maybe in a different way. So so right now I'm with this organization. I'm working with youth and women. I brought Dalit, Adivasi, Muslim people within the organization, and also in the programs, in the activities. And I think this is what should be for us, as you see how India is becoming a very fascist country. And I think it's hard time that we all are going through, and it's very important that we think something which is more into becoming more with more progressive, and within our movements we do lack progressiveness in terms of ideology and thought processes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manjula. We have 5 minutes left, and I think we can add another 5 minutes.
Sejo, breather. We can go 15-20 minutes beyond if we need.
Thank you.
Depending on the audience, this is going really well. Anthony has agreed, so no need to rush.
Whoa, I can breathe. Thank you, Kiran, and thank you for lobbying behind the scenes. So our first, immediately there will be reactions, comments, questions from the speakers. So please go ahead. Shama will be taking them to the speakers.
I think start with one deep breath.
Yeah, but you know,
Sejo,
I have...
I don't think there are necessarily questions. I see a lot of responses, reactions, and connects that people have felt. So rather than a specific question, and because I actually have to jump off to another call, I'm going to ask Kiran to sort of move into the open session. And I think that will provide us the best space to have the kind of conversations that all of us want to have, right? And thank you, everyone. It just the chat has been, you know, I think so powerful, and there's a sense of connectedness. I'm really glad that all of us are here and talking about this. Thank you, and over to you, Kiran.
Thank you, Shama. I think I appreciate the audience staying hooked to this conversation. I think We'll start with questions for the speakers before we start reflecting on the broader one. So if anyone wants to talk, there was someone who wanted to speak about Venkat Reddy, or someone has questions or appreciation or comments, my request for the audience is that unmute yourself. If possible, come on the video. Thoda sa apna khud ka parichay de dijiye, tell us a little bit, but as short as possible, because we have a little bit of extension. We don't have too much time. So without further ado, if someone wants to raise their hand, I'll recognize them. Or if you want to come off of mute and just speak, I'm happy to have you here. And you can address to the speakers any questions you have first, and then we'll talk about a broader sense of things.
This is Pradeep Mahapatra from Udyam, Bhubaneswar. I enjoyed this whole episode of discussion today, and it is moreover Manjula Pradeep's talk. It is more vibrant. It's enjoyed all everybody says discussion. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Yes, myself Suresh Gargatti. I am from Swasti Health Catalyst. Venkat Reddy is a great leader actually from the GAY. So he got many awards from the state level and as well as district level. He is a great leader, and he is taking all his community members with him by providing many of the schemes, subsidized loans and other stuff from central and state government schemes. And he's got the best COVID-19 warrior from the district authority last year, because he was in the field with all the PPE kits, and then he supported the department in identifying the members, those are suffering with the symptoms of COVID-19. And then also he took the role in testing and treatment. So really a great leader from our Karnataka. Thank you, Reddy. Well done.
Yeah. I would just request questioners and people who want to make suggestions is to keep in mind that we are not here talking of exceptional leaders, because exceptional leaders will make their space from the margins. We're talking of leadership spaces and how we can expand them to be more inclusive. So that is the question from the leaders from the margins as well as people who have enjoyed privileges so far. So that is the reflective space we're talking about. Thank you.
Yes, Abhinav, please.
I just wanted to ask a question that basically Manjula put the points. So, and even the other speaker also put the points. So I just wanted to make sure a point that privileges, when you talk about the sexuality, when you explore about the sexuality, does privilege play a very important role with respect to the finance? Because the higher, whosoever is pretty rich or something like that, they have, I feel that they have the option or opportunity to explore their sexuality with reference to LGBT community. But when you talk about the very marginalized, financially weaker section, they are not able to specifically explore that sexuality. So that I want to bring on the table. Anyone can answer me.
Can I come in? This is a topic sort of close to my heart also, because I work with marginalized communities, and it's been very interesting for me. It was a learning over time that even within the LGBTQ community, there are classes, and if we want to call it people from the SC/ST community who feel to be at the periphery of the LGBTQ community versus the upper castes, and and I've seen that struggle in Tamil Nadu, which is a very vibrant LGBTQ community, and of course it's there in other places. We would have conversations saying that, they actually have local terminology for this, that we are not them. And I'd be like, what are you talking about them? So I think even within, and I'll give you another example, right? And I work with people living with HIV, and we've not brought in these disease condition labels, and now we have COVID-19. But even within that, when we work with people living with HIV, I would find that within that also, there'd be how did you contract it? And based on that, there'd be these divisions, right? And we create these divisions for whatever reason. And I do find it, I think for all of us to acknowledge those divisions created knowingly or unknowingly, but and then looking at how we work through them, I think is very, very critical. But I think, Abhinav, you bring up a great point. It is true.
If you allow me, just adding to that point, I have an observation. Maybe like for an LGBTQ institute like TISS, where LGBTQ are pura association hai unka, and all of them are very much aware of all these scenarios, and they are continuously learning these things. But again, the kind of divide they have among themselves, that too based on caste, class sort of thing, I think that affects a lot. That affects entire movement as well as the people who are already marginalized at that moment, and then this gender binaries marginalize them more, and again their own people don't accept them. That is very traumatizing, and that affects a lot. So I think that was very valid point. Thank you.
I think okay. Paramita has been with some hand up.
Yeah, okay, and I'm sorry, I'm in no position to put my video on. It's a terrible network. I've been, going in and out. So one question, I think this is the one session in so many sessions of Catalyst Change Week, Catalyzing Change Week that I've been attending, leading, that I heard space for a non-English local language. Now, this is one of the major challenges of creating inclusive leadership spaces, I think, language barrier. And that is not just in terms of English, in terms of other forms of expression, let's say sign language, let's say younger children who feel more confident to express their thoughts through, let's say, music, poetry. I work with very marginalized children, and hence I have had a scope to get exposed to this kind of languages. So my question to myself and everyone here is that how do we create inclusive spaces in terms of language? How do we address the universal language barrier that always, almost always shuts out grassroots voices? Thank you.
Can I say something, Sergio? I agree with you, Paramita, that language really plays an important role in expressing oneself. And I agree with everything what you said. I just want to say that I am from North India. I'm from UP, born in Gujarat. And there the language is Gujarati, right? So for me, it was, there's something where I felt marginalized because my language was Hindi, my mother tongue. So it was a difficult time. So it's not only one particular language which we are talking about. It's also like how you are excluded just because of your, you don't know the language. And when you speak the local language, Gujarati, and you fumble and people will start laughing on you and also saying, oh, means that you're not from Gujarat. That's how I was I raised as myself as a social worker. So it takes a lot of guts also. Like I really feel that it's an opportunity for all of us, like those who are like accepting each other's barriers and treating them with dignity also is very important. That and many a times those who talk about human rights violations, they themselves violate the rights of others, and that is something which is very painful for us to understand that and that's happening. And and language is itself, like when I work with marginalized women, and I do know that marginalized women, most of them who work at the grassroots, they can't articulate themselves in English. And many times they also speak in the local language. So you need someone to support them, and you have to help them, because then the resources don't go to them. Financial, I think that's very important. As we see that, how do we write proposals? How do we draft proposals? Everything, documentation, they are left out because they don't have those skills. And I think one is that we have to empower them. We have to build their skills, and they also have to work upon themselves. Apart from just saying that no, where you are, you be there, and we just keep on supporting you. No. If we so leadership is something where one also explore oneself, that saying that these are my limitations and these are my weakness, and I have to work upon themselves so that I can. So it's like mirroring oneself and saying that, oh, these are something where I have to work upon. Yeah, thanks.
Anushri had a question, two questions actually. Anushri, would you like to come off of mute and share? Thanks.
Thanks, Kiran. So I think my question to the panelists and anybody who wants to respond is like two. One is that because a lot of you talked about questioning different kinds of hierarchies or different kinds of marginalization in your spaces, what do you think it takes to create spaces and organizations that allow for uncomfortable conversations? Because I think conversations around identity are uncomfortable, especially for people in privilege. And the second is, because we all use labels like marginalized, disenfranchised, because we want to bring attention to an issue and talk about certain populations that are maybe not getting the right kind of attention. But how do you sort of interrogate those labels, which are all about deficits, right? It only talks about an identity in terms of it being bad or sad. So how do you sort of interrogate those two labels? So those were my questions.
Shall I?
Yeah, please.
I think I will start with the second question which you raised about marginalized and the deficit we carry. I think when as one grows, like Sudarshan, I, and we three of us, like when we grow ourselves, we are not told that we are Dalits, right? We come to know through our experiences. And for me, I would say that how do I coin myself as Dalit is something that, okay, I represent a marginalized community, but when I say Dalit, it is a power for me. So it's like raising the issue of caste and taking the movement with the Dalit rights movement and taking the caste issue in the UN agenda is something where I build upon myself. Because when we say black movement, right, black rights movement, then there's also an identity of color. And when you say about Dalit, it's not a caste identity, but it is a identity of marginalized community from a particular from the caste community, right? So in that sense, deficit doesn't come there. Deficit comes when you are treated differently within the movements because of your identity from coming from this particular caste or so. Until people, so when my name is Manjula Pradeep and people struggle to understand who I am because I'm Manjula, but I'm Pradeep, which my father wanted to hide my caste identity. And because of his own fear of people knowing who are we are. So in that sense, I would say that it really takes guts for people from our community to speak out and to raise our voices. So the deficit comes where the privileged people feel that their spaces are being taken away by us because from our communities, people are now standing up for their rights. People are articulating themselves. So in that sense, the deficit goes to those who are so-called privileged people, where they think that our power is shrinking. The spaces are shrinking for us. I would say in that sense. And identity privilege, yes, I do agree with you that identity brings a lot of privilege, but like the identity for me starts with my gender, not with my caste as a woman. So so I see the male gay, the privilege which I see in my family to my brothers and not to me, and that creates a kind of a pain and a kind of anger as well. So so see, there are so many lenses within the privilege dimension. So you can't. So why one caste is a one privilege, but then as we talk about intersectionality, we bring so many different layers of privileges, and I think it's very important for us to understand the graded hierarchy and the vulnerability index related to that. That's what Dr. Ambedkar said, and I think it's very important for people who work with the unprivileged people. They have to take their identity from being a privileged person and working with these people, because ultimately what is happening and what every time happens is the people who are not privileged are being represented by those from their community, and the people who work with them are also from their community. So there is no shift. It's always like we are creating boundaries around our movements, and I think that's affecting our entire work of civil society. And I think we talk about shrinking spaces, but I think there's spaces, we have created those spaces, we are shrinking those spaces just because we have created our own walls around our identity, and we don't want to leave that privileged identity, and we don't want to work with those who are not privileged. Thanks.
I'd like to pose the second question Anushri had, which was about labels. That labels of being a Dalit or having alternative preferences or whatever. Like, what are your views, Sudarshan, and maybe Venkat Reddy, you could also speak a little bit about the labels that society uses, whether you are, what are your thoughts? Should they exist? Should the attempt be to not make, like, I think when it came to my female friends, at least that's the discrimination I understand, where they said that I like spaces where I'm not made to feel like a woman, where I'm just treated as a person. So does that make sense? Can you elaborate a bit more on this?
Yeah.
Okay. And the question I would raise along with that, just before you speak, Sudarshan, is why is it not possible to be a woman and a person? But that's just an additional thing. Yeah. So Sudarshan, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Manjula ji has put that in very systematic way. Just to, in very layman's language, with whatever limited understanding I have, spaces is nothing like something out of blue or something which is very unique जगह ऐसा कुछ नहीं है या फिर चांद से तोड़ के नहीं लाना है. The day-to-day life, the conversation we have with our employees, the kind of dialogues we do among ourselves, I think that creates that space. And for me, or for anyone for that matter, who newly enters your organization, how you, being the leader of that organization, treats that employee, how you engage with them, how you discuss those things. And it's not only discussing how well are you, how do you do it? No, understand, no, what is their journey. I think I remember one of the conversation with Kavita. I think that was one of the best conversation I had in that organization, because that actually makes me reflect about my journey, and I understand her perception, or she understands where I come from. I think that kind of thing. And in that space, if that comfort is there, then definitely anyone can put that uncomfortable questions or ask disruptive dialogues. Regarding this labels, I would come, Kiran, as you have said, it matters a lot. But again, how you see that. For an example, for me, Dalit can be a label of assertion for me, and it can be a label of humiliation as well. So how I perceive it and how other person has intended that to me, I think that makes a huge difference. It's not only label, but how you use it and which context you use it, that matters a lot. For me, if anyone calls me Dalit, I can at one point of time say that, yes, I'm a proud Dalit, I'm a rich Dalit, I'm new Dalit. I am fancy, I'm beautiful, I'm handsome. We are Dalit, we are new Dalits. But again, if someone intends the same thing, Dalit, as me, that Dalit means broken. And that can happen to me because I have lived that struggle. I have been through places where I have struggled a lot, for which maybe other person need not to do that. So I can take both things, but how you say that, I think that makes a lot of difference. And the question Kavita has asked, I think makes sense. I don't want to feel Dalit because of my background and all. Look at me, how I look, how I present myself, that makes the difference. That's all. I think Paramita is trying to say something. Okay, sorry. No, I think that's it.
Thank you, Sudarshan. Venkat, last comments.
Sir, namaste, sir. Sir, ನನಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರಿಮಿನೇಷನ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಸರ್, ನಾನು ಸುಮಾರು 16 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಹದಿಹಾರಿದ ಒಂದು ವಯಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ನನ್ನ ದೇಹದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳಾಯ್ತು ಸರ್. ಹೇಗೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ನನಗೆ ಯಾಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಕ್ತಿರೋಂತ ಒಂದು ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ಆ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಯಾಕೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೀನಿ, ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರಿಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಈ ತರ ಹಾಕಿದ್ಯಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಡೆದಾಗ ನನ್ನ ಸ್ಕೂಲಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅಕ್ಕಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರಿಮಿನೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಸರ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವಾಗ ನನ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಹೊಡಿತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಇದ್ರ ವಿಚಾರವಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್. ಆ ನಂತರ ನಾನು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ, ನಾನು ತುಂಬಾ ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿದಾಗ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿದಾಗ ನನ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯ್ತು. ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ಅಲ್ಲ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ, ನನ್ನಂತ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯವರು ತುಂಬಾ ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. ಅವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಚೂರು ಧೈರ್ಯ ಬಂತು ಸರ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸರ್ವೇ ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯ ನಮ್ಮಂತವ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಕಡೆಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಅಂತ ಬಂತು. ಅವಾಗ ನಾನು ಅನಿಸಿತು, ನನಗೆ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿಗೆ ಬರ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಅನಿಸಿದಾಗ ನಾನು ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳುವಾಗ, ನನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡಾಗ ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರಿಮಿನೇಷನ್ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಯ್ತು ಸರ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವಾಗ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮಂತವ್ರು ಇದಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಆಗ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮುದಾಯದವ್ರನ್ನ ಒಗ್ಗೂಡಿಸಿದಾಗ ಹೌದು ಇಂಥ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಕೂಡ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಸೇವೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡಬೇಕು, ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಿ ಅವರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಒಂದು ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಹಿನಿಗೆ ತರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಬಂತು. ಅವಾಗ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದೊರೆಯಕತ್ತ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅನುಕೂಲಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ತುಂಬಾ ಈಸಿಯಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ಸುಲಭವಾಗಿ ದೊರಕಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಆಯ್ತು ಸರ್. ಅವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಖುಷಿ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು. ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ ಸ್ಪಂದಿಸುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾನು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಈ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ಕೊಡಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಕೂಡ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಷ್ಟ ಪಡೆದಿರ ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಸರ್ಕಾರದಿಂದ ಸಿಗುವಂತ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳು ಸಿಗ್ತವೆ, ಈಸಿಯಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಬದುಕಬಹುದು ಬಾಳ್ಬಹುದು ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. ಈಗ ನನಗೆ ಈ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಆಗಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನನ್ನ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಕಳಂಕವಾಗಿ ತಾರತಮ್ಯದಿಂದ ನೋಡದೇನೆ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮೆಂಬರ್, ನಮ್ಮ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜದ ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಕಡೆಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ವೇದಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹಂಚಿಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ವೇದಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಅನುಕೂಲ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಸರ್. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಈಗ ಕೂಡ COVID-19 ಟೈಮ್ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸುಮಾರು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ 32 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಗ್ರಾಸರಿಯನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಸರ್. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಇಲಾಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜನರಲ್ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಕೂಡ ಸೇರಿ ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರು ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮವರೇ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರೇ, ನಮ್ಮ ಜನರೇ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನನಗೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಕಳಂಕ ತಾರತಮ್ಯ ಹೇಳ್ದೇನೆ 32 ಲಕ್ಷ ರೂಪಾಯಿ ದಾನ ಜನ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹಾರೈಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈಗ ಕೂಡ ನನಗೆ COVID-19 ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೂಡ ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನನಗೆ ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ನನ್ನ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೇನೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಜನರನ್ನ ನನ್ನ ಕಳಂಕ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನನ್ನ ಬದುಕಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಸರ್.
Thank you, Venkat Garu, but unfortunately, I don't speak Kannada and Shama had to step out. Anyone here would like to volunteer to try to translate a bit? I got bits and pieces of words that I kind of understood. Yes, Suresh.
Yeah, so yes, myself Suresh. Okay, so actually, hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
we can
so
hear.
Actually what Venkat Reddy was saying is in the age of 16, he got different attitudes. So that's why in his family also they are discriminating, and even in the departments also many of the peoples are discriminating, stigmatizing him. So he is couldn't able to enjoy all the moments of his life. So actually when he met his friend Srinivas, so at that time he came to know like him, many of the persons are there in the world. So that's why he got motivated from him, and then he also read many books and all. So after that he tried to meet all the various peoples around his community, and then he tried to engage with the members. So after that he already he said no, he opened his own organization, and then he tried to engage with the stakeholders, and then he facilitated for many of the services to all the community members. So in the COVID-19 time also, so many of his MSM and his TGs, his community organization members couldn't able to get the services. So at that time, so he met the authorities, and then he facilitated all the available services from the department to the members. So much of struggle he faced in his life, and still he is moving on. Okay, so he is still young, and then his organization is like a now learning site in Karnataka. Many of the other organizations, those of same kind, they are visiting to his organization, what the system the organization is following, and then what the best practices they are adopting. So that they are coming, and then they are learning. Okay, and then in future his dream is to involve more of his community members and provide the facilities from the government and central government. Yeah.
Thank you, Suresh Garu. Thank you, Venkat Garu. We don't have too much time. We've taken 5 minutes beyond our extended time. Anthony said that 3:30 is when the next group joins this call. So by then we'll have to exit ourselves, but we do have a few minutes. I think it's been a heavy packed 1 hour, 20 minutes. I don't know how time has just like dissipated right now. I would like to thank all of you for attending and participating and staying with us much beyond our scheduled time. It's always a good sign. Thank you, dear speakers, for speaking and putting forth your truth. I would like to keep the floor open at this stage. If anyone has any comments, thoughts, I don't think we have time to reflect on what Catalyst 2030 should do. I think we will absorb today's call and go through the chat transcription and everything that was spoken. And we would love to speak with all the people who've attended today with our plans and maybe co-create this template and let's see if we could seed different organizations to take this forward. But thank you. Over to my co-facilitators, Sergio and yes, Sudarshan.
Sudarshan here. I think there was a question in chat box asked by Surabhi. Just wanted to briefly, maybe a few seconds that would do. So Surabhi, I think the major part of this story is I'm also working in a space which is kind of established already and they have their structure in place. But as we new people joining that space, we can definitely put efforts to make people sensitize. Actually, yesterday only I was talking on this issue with other people. Being honest with you, many people don't even realize that this is the issue. They don't have idea that what struggle other people's do to go through. Because for them, it is very, I don't know, I don't have words to express, but as we who knows that, who has studied from an institute, who has been working in social sector, I think if you have that sensitivity, it's our job to make others sensitize about it, others know about those issues. If anyone is there, we can be considerate. We can help to create that spaces. We need not to rely on only policies of the organization, but as individuals, so we have a lot to do, and definitely all of us will do it with that hope. Thank you so much. I also have to drop off at 3:30. So if there is anything, please ask. I think otherwise, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, can I have the last word? So just wanted to share with you, you know, how we got into this session because we all have an angst. And when we do something right, we also have that happiness. So, you know, all of you, we don't have to look for big theories. And of course, we have guide, we have suggestions, we have leaders like Manjula, Sudarshan, Venkat Reddy when we want. But when you're doing something right, you know it. And, you know, this will reflect everywhere. It will reflect in the respect that you have within the family. It changes the whole structure of the organization. I felt it that it's not just about, you know, how we create. So if we try what Sudarshan is saying, it will create a whole new structure, which some people are right now, when you hear about this very fancy word called holacracy, it is nothing but what Dr. Ambedkar has already said. You know, how we create new structures where people have a sense of respect for everybody, whether it is the family or a party or it is an organization. And I know that instinctively we have it, but years of hierarchy building, patriarchy, caste, and we have suppressed ourselves as well as others. In suppressing others, there's a lot that we are suppressing within us. So once we start changing, you know, you will feel a much happier person. That's what I have felt. And with those words, you know, I just wanted to close this on a reflective note, unless someone else has to, we just have a few more minutes if someone wants to add anything. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Be safe, be well, take care of yourself, take care of everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anthony, for being patient with
Thank
us.
you, madam.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you to all
Thank
of
you,
the
sir.
amazing speakers, and thank you to you all as the hosts and moderators for putting together this amazing session. So yeah, thank you to you all as well. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Anthony.